He tapped the table 3 times, and everyone ignored it. No one in town knew that a single rhythm, barely audible over clinking forks, could awaken ghosts from another era. But just 2 hours later, 4 black vehicles rolled to a silent stop at the edge of town. No sirens, no announcements, just a signal long forgotten, finally answered. What was the message he sent, and who were they coming for? If that silent signal gave you chills, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for more untold stories, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. He always came in at exactly 6:30, not 6:29, not 6:31. Every single morning, the bell above Molly's diner would chime softly. And there he was, Lucas Grant. Age 68, jacket zipped up, newspaper tucked neatly under one arm, and that same worn-out flannel shirt that never seemed to change. He never looked rushed, never ordered anything new, just black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, whole wheat toast. Booth number 3 by the window, no sign on it, but everyone in Gatlin Hollow knew that was Lucas's seat. To outsiders, he looked like just another quiet man in a quiet Tennessee mountain town. Retired rail worker, kept to himself. Didn't say much, maybe a soft thanks ma'am to Amelia, the college student who worked mornings. But those who watched closer, they noticed the way he moved like every step had purpose. They noticed how he never missed the obituaries, and how he always sat with his back to the wall. No one asked why, but maybe they should have. Because one Tuesday morning, a storm rolled into town. Not thunder, not rain, something much, much louder. It started with the roar of engines. They weren't from around here. 5 motorcycles, black, chrome, loud rumbled into Gatlin Hollow like thunder on 2 wheels. Locals paused. A few turned their heads, but no one said a word. These weren't tourists. They weren't lost. By lunchtime, the strangers had taken over the abandoned repair shop on Mill Road. By sundown, the town bar had closed early, and by the end of the week, someone's front window had been smashed, a pharmacy broken into, and 3 high schoolers were caught with pills no one recognized. People whispered. Sheriff Keller called them a problem without a plan, but no one wanted to confront them. Then came Tuesday. The same Tuesday Lucas always sat at booth number 3. Same paper, same coffee, same seat. Amelia was pouring his refill when the bell jingled. Her hand trembled just a little, but enough to spill a few drops on the table. She looked up. She looked. 5 men, black leather, chains, cold eyes. The one in front had a snake tattoo running from his throat to his cheek. They didn't wait to be seated, didn't speak politely. They swaggered in like they owned the place, and they acted like it too. The leader, Vex, they called him, dragged a chair into the middle of the diner and threw his boot onto the next table. His men spread out, sprawling, laughing, leering. When Amelia walked past, Vex grabbed her wrist. "How about your number?" "Sweetheart." She tried to pull away. "Please, let me go." But he just smiled, that slow, venomous kind of smile. The entire room froze. No one stood up, no one said a word, except for one man in booth number 3. Lucas didn't look up, didn't shout, didn't raise his voice. He simply tapped the table. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. To most, it sounded like an old man fidgeting. To someone trained, it was something else entirely. A signal, a code, and a warning. Behind the kitchen counter, a gray-haired cook named Henry dropped his spatula. His hands went still, his eyes locked on Lucas. No words were exchanged. Henry just took off his apron and walked out the back door. Nobody noticed, but something ancient had just been reawakened. Henry didn't run. He didn't panic. He moved like a man who knew exactly what came next. Out behind Molly's diner, He stepped into his rusty pickup, turned the ignition with a click, and was gone. Swallowed by the winding roads of the Smoky Mountains. Inside, time seemed to slow. The gang had made themselves at home. Greasy fingerprints on the jukebox. Half-eaten food spilled on the floor. One of them started tossing sugar packets into his coffee just to watch it overflow. Vex still had Amelia's wrist in his grip. Every time she tried to move, his fingers flexed tighter. Lucas didn't move. He just sat, one hand resting on the table, the other folded over the day's paper. He was counting, not the seconds, not the sips of his coffee. He was counting on something bigger. 2 miles out of town, Henry veered off the paved road and down a gravel path choked with weeds. He stopped at an old barn half collapsed, hidden behind pine trees, and slipped inside. In the shadows, beneath a wooden feed trough, he knelt, lifted a false panel, unlatched a steel case sealed shut for decades. Inside a communication console straight out of the Cold War, obsolete to most, lethal to those who still remembered how to use it. He powered it on. The green glow flickered, static hummed. Then he reached into his wallet, pulled out a small, worn key, engraved with the emblem of a forgotten unit, Shadow Echo. He inserted the key, typed the numbers, 7810321, code pattern table 2, echo signal active. And then he waited. Miles away in a Michigan bait shop, a garage in Texas, a woodshop in Montana, old receivers blinked to life. Phones that hadn't rung in years buzzed once. Then again, no words, no names, just movement. Because when the table was tapped, they came. Back at the diner, Vex was still laughing, still loud, still dangerous. No one noticed the clock tick to 8:28. No one except Lucas. He looked up, just once, and outside, 4 black SUVs turned down Cedar Avenue. Not police, not sheriff, something else. They parked in perfect formation, doors opened quiet, synchronized. 4 men stepped out, middle-aged, weathered, calm. Each moved like a predator with nothing to prove. One by one, they entered Molly's diner. No announcements, no hesitation. The bell above the door chimed, and for the first time since they'd arrived, the gang went silent. Vex turned, his grin faded. Lucas nodded once, and the man in front, Silas Boone, asked just 5 words. "Where's the problem?" "Mr. Grant." For the first time, Vex looked confused. Not afraid, not yet, just off balance. Who were these guys? No uniforms, no badges. Just 4 older men standing with quiet certainty. The leader, Silas Boone, didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. He locked eyes with Lucas. Lucas simply nodded once, like a passing breeze, then leaned back, folded his paper neatly, and placed it on the edge of the table. "Don't hurt them," he said softly. "Just remove the problem." Silas turned, and in one smooth motion, he stepped toward Vex, grabbed his wrist mid-reach, twisted, hard. A loud clank echoed as the pistol Vex had hidden slipped from his waistband and slid across the diner floor. Then, a thud. Vex hit the ground face first, his arm locked behind his back. A knee pressed firmly between his shoulder blades. The rest of the gang jumped up, but they were too slow. 3 men, 3 targets. Each member of Foxtrot 6 moved like they'd never stopped, like the years hadn't dulled them, only sharpened their instincts. One man flipped a chair, pinned a thug against the wall. Another blocked the exit and disarmed the one with the knife. No shouting, no chaos, just precision. It was over in 28 seconds. Amelia stood frozen near the coffee station, her hand covering her mouth, eyes wide. Behind the counter, the teenage dishwasher Eli peeked through the kitchen window. his apron soaked in dishwater, eyes locked on the floor like he'd just seen ghosts. To the customers, the gang was terror. To Lucas, they were just noise. But now, to everyone in the diner, Lucas wasn't just an old man anymore. He was something else entirely. The silence that followed was thick, but not heavy. It was the kind of silence that falls when the threat is gone, and the world resets itself, inch by inch. Silas looked back at Lucas. "Extraction plan," he asked. Lucas didn't blink. "No sirens, no cuffs. County line drops, leave them rattled. That's enough." One by one, the gang members were escorted out. Still breathing, still whole, but changed. Vex was the last as he led through the door. He scanned the diner. Confused. Beaten, but not by fists, by something deeper. He locked eyes with Lucas one last time. Lucas didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The town never saw the SUVs leave. They didn't roar. They didn't linger. They just faded into the morning fog like they were never there at all. No sirens, no arrests, no paperwork. Just 5 men left at a bus station 1 county over. Stripped of their weapons. Stripped of their pride. Each given a plain manila envelope. Inside, 4 words: "Do not return to Gatlin Hollow." Back at Molly's diner, the regulars exhaled for the first time in days. Coffee was poured. Forks clinked against plates. Life, somehow, resumed only this time. It felt sturdier. Sheriff Keller showed up 15 minutes later, lights flashing, hand on his belt, expecting chaos. Instead, he stepped into a diner humming with peace. Bacon sizzling, eggs flipping, and Lucas Grant, sitting in booth number 3 reading his paper like any other morning. "Got a call about a disturbance," the sheriff muttered, eyes scanning the room. Amelia glanced up from behind the counter. "Just a misunderstanding. Sheriff," she said, "all handled." He blinked, confused. "Thought I saw bikes out front." Lucas spoke without looking up. "They left them. Someone will tow them later." Keller studied him. Something in Lucas's tone told him not to dig deeper, so he didn't. He tipped his hat, turned around, and left. No report was filed, no follow-up made. A few days later, something new appeared in the diner. A small brass plaque, screwed into booth number 3. Simple, quiet, barely noticeable. It read, "If he taps, leave." No one said who put it there, but everyone understood why. And from that day on, no one, not even tourists, sat in that booth, not unless Lucas invited them. As for Amelia, she changed. Not just at work, not just with Lucas. She moved with confidence. She didn't flinch when someone raised their voice. She didn't smile out of obligation anymore. She smiled because she knew she was safe. She never asked Lucas what really happened, and he never explained. But each morning, before he arrived, she made sure the coffee was poured fresh, strong, and black, waiting at booth number 3. Lucas never missed a morning. He still carried the same folded paper under his arm, still wore that flannel shirt, those worn-out boots. To a stranger, he looked like any other retiree passing time. But the locals, they saw him now, really saw him. And whenever someone new passed through town, especially the rough-looking kind, they always noticed one thing first. That empty booth in the corner, always spotless, always untouched. And if Lucas happened to lift his hand and tap the table, even once, everyone looked toward the door just in case. Lucas never asked for attention. Not before, not after. He didn't boast. Didn't wink at the regulars like a man with secrets. He simply showed up every morning just like he always had. But Gatlin Hollow had changed, and so had the people in it. Amelia wasn't the only one who moved differently now. The town's eyes were sharper, more protective, more aware, especially when Lucas walked through that door. At the VFW hall 2 towns over, his name began to surface quietly, like a tide. Some called him the conductor, others just nodded and said, "He still has the keys." Veterans whispered phrases like Table 2 and Echo Protocol. But if anyone asked directly, they'd just smile and say, "Old stories, nothing worth writing down." But it was worth writing down. Because what Lucas did wasn't just about 5 gang members. It wasn't about violence. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about a promise. One he'd made long ago. One he still kept. Even when no one was looking. A promise to protect. To stay ready. Even when the world moved on. That kind of discipline doesn't retire. It doesn't collect dust in a photo album. It doesn't fade when the medals do. It waits. Quietly. In flannel and boots, with a black coffee and a folded paper. Sometimes, a man doesn't need a uniform to lead. He just needs to show up every single day so that others feel safe enough to do the same. Teenage boys who used to slouch in the diner now sat straighter. Young women glanced toward booth number 3 before closing up their shifts. Not out of fear, out of respect. Lucas had never raised his voice. He never had to. His silence said more than orders ever could. That's what growth looks like when you're already strong. It's not louder. It's deeper. He didn't become someone new after that Tuesday. He just reminded everyone of who he'd always been. And slowly, quietly, the town grew with him. Lucas Grant never asked for recognition. He never told his story, never wore a medal, never stood up when people whispered his name. He just kept showing up. Same booth, same paper blue, same quiet presence. But now, even those who had never spoken to him felt it. That weight, that steadiness, that silent assurance that someone was always watching. And not the kind that judges, the kind that protects. Gatlin Hollow had been just another quiet mountain town. Now, it was his town. Not by ownership, not by title, by trust. Every now and then, a stranger would wander in, rough-looking, curious, loud. They'd spot the empty booth by the window, maybe think about sitting down until someone behind the counter gave them a polite shake of the head. Best not. And if they asked why, the answer was always the same. You don't want to find out. The legend of booth number 3 spread not just through town, but across radio static between old CB users, in poker games at veterans halls, in the nods of men who knew what silence could mean. Because it wasn't about Lucas anymore. It was about what he represented. Honor, discipline, brotherhood. In a world full of noise, screaming online debates, outrage at every turn, and bravado masked as strength, Lucas was proof that true power didn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it sits in a corner, sipping black coffee, watching, waiting. And when needed, just one tap on the table was enough. Foxtrot 6 returned to their lives. A hardware store owner in Ohio, a fishing guide in Michigan, a retired park ranger in Kentucky. Phones unplugged, the system went silent. But the Brotherhood, it never really shut down. Because some codes don't die, some oaths don't expire. And some men, they never stop serving. They just stop wearing the uniform. In today's world, we've been conditioned to believe that power needs to be loud, that strength wears a uniform, demands attention, or fights for the spotlight. But then there are men like Lucas Grant who remind us that real power often says nothing at all. It's not about bravado, it's about presence. He didn't need to threaten, raise his voice, or prove himself, because men like Lucas already did, long ago, in places most of us will never see, for people who may never know their names. And they're still out there, sitting quietly in diners, scanning every room. Not because they're paranoid, but because that's what training leaves behind. So the next time you see an old man alone in a booth, don't dismiss him. Respect him, because you never know the wars he's already won so you could live in peace. Have you ever met someone like Lucas Quiet? Calm and unforgettable, someone who didn't speak much, but you knew they carried a story worth listening to. Share your story in the comments. We read everyone, And if this video reminded you of someone in your life, send it to them, let them know they're seen. And remember, sometimes, the strongest people in the room are the ones who never need to say a word.